Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our demonstration. We're going to take just a few seconds as we've just opened the doors. And we want to give all of our participants an opportunity to get settled, get their audio working, get their video up. And then we're going to dive in. I'd like to begin the webinar by thanking Overdrive for partnering with us for this In the Know webinar series, Beyond Heritage Month's Strategies for Authentic Collection Inclusion All Year, with Dr. Audrey Barbakoff, sorry, Audrey. And we'll also hear authentic collection building philosophies from our editor-in-chief, Laurie Likoff, today. Now, before we get started, I just wanted to get everyone familiar with GoToWebinar. And the second half of our demonstration today will offer you the opportunity to ask questions of Laurie Likoff, again, our editor-in-chief, about our collection development strategies and also the titles that she's going to be talking about specifically that really fill within, libraries who are completing collection audits and looking for diverse titles. So in order to ask a question in GoToWebinar, there is a box called questions in your GoToWebinar module. I'm going to ask you to go ahead and click that right now. It might look like a question mark depending on what type of computer you have. It might be a question mark or it might be the word questions or chat. Go ahead and click that link. And if you can just type in the chat where you're calling from, that will tell me that you know where the question box is in case you do have questions. So I am calling from Central Connecticut currently, just north of Hartford. It is beautiful out today, but quite chilly. And once I see some of those cities and towns come in, I'll be satisfied and we can get started. Excellent. So that's where you ask questions of Laurie, if you have any. No worries if you don't. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first panelist, or not panelist here, our speaker, Dr. Audrey Barbakoff. Dr. Audrey Barbakoff is the founder and CEO of CoLab Capacity, which offers community-centered consulting to libraries and other social impact organizations. She has more than a decade of experience as a librarian, manager, and leader in public libraries. Dr. Barbakoff is the author of Adults Just Want to Have Fun, Programs for Emerging Adults, and the forthcoming book, 12 Steps to a Community-Led Library. Audrey, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand the reins over to you. Hold on one second. Here it is. And take it away.
Wonderful. Thanks, Lisa.
Audrey. Yeah.
Aha. Perfect. All right. Are you seeing my slides?
Yes.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for having me. I was so thrilled to join you today and talk about this topic of moving beyond Heritage Month for really authentic inclusion in our collections and our Readers Advisory services. And centering and including our communities is my passion, and I'm excited to talk about it through this lens. So I framed this as being about Heritage Months, because no shade to Heritage Months, but if we only think about a community once a year, we're not truly including them. Of course, there's nothing wrong with highlighting Heritage Months and marking important dates on the calendar. Those are important to many communities and many individuals. And those, of course, are times when our communities may be actively looking for materials by or about a particular group or topic. So we are meeting a need when we highlight them. But folks with marginalized identities, we're here all year, right? And our communities notice if we ignore them for the other 11 months. So for really authentic inclusion and to build long-term relationships of trust, we need to move beyond marking individual moments and instead think about, or in addition, really think about how we're going to authentically include these voices in our work all through the year as part of our normal systems, our normal way of doing work. So we really need to center and serve our BIPOC, our minoritized, our excluded communities consistently. So keep doing those Heritage Months, but I'm going to talk about some things that you can do the other 11 months of the year for those communities. So as Lisa mentioned, I'm a hybrid creature. I'm both a practitioner and a scholar, so I really like to nerd out on frameworks and theory. So I'm going to use a framework to guide our discussion today. And this is a little bit of a mishmash of some of my very favorite frameworks and research out there. There are many kinds of spectra, that's the plural of spectrum, spectra of public participation, or sort of ladders, or stair steps of engagement. And I think it's really important that we have some specific language to break down this kind of broad concept of outreach or engagement. Those are such big, messy terms that often we can use them in conversation, and what I'm saying and what you're hearing can be completely different, right? The picture that we have in our heads of what it means to engage can be just, it can mean such a wide spectrum of things. They can be really radically different pictures in our heads. So it's very important to have some language to think about the different ways that we can engage people. So this is kind of a mishmash of some of my favorite frameworks. Some examples of those are the International Association of Public Participation, or IAP2, their Spectrum of Public Participation, Heart's Ladder, which you may be familiar with if you work in youth services or youth collections, the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, or GARE, Facilitating Power, the Working Together Project. I know I rattled those off really quickly, but this is going to be recorded, so you can, if you really want to dig in, you can dive back in and hear those names again. But I've taken some of my favorite elements from each of those to create this kind of synthesis framework for inclusion. So at the top, right, the most inclusion, we have empowerment. This could also be co-creation, deferring to, justice, liberation, right? This is kind of your big idea. And in this type of work, power is shared equally between the library and the community, or it is returned to the community, so that folks who have been systematically denied access to power and resources in our society are given back the institutional power that we hold as libraries. So that is the most, or the highest rung, right, of engagement or outreach. I say highest, and the reason I pause there a little bit is I don't want to impose a value judgment here. I am not trying to say that empowerment is the only way to do work or is the most valuable way to do work. We're going to go through each of these and talk about what some collection strategies are that you might use, and when and why you would employ them in each of these stair steps. So a little less engaged is, or a little less power sharing, essentially, is engagement. So this is consulting or involving. These are the ways that we listen to our community, but we retain the power. And this is really common in libraries. This is often where I see us doing our work, is that we care about our communities. We want to center the voices of our communities. So we go out and in one way or another, we ask people, right? We work with partners, or we do surveys, or we look at collection data. We engage in some kind of dialogue, but ultimately, the power to make any final decision, to plan a service, to decide what books go on the shelves, to make decisions about the spaces that our collections are in, we retain the ultimate power for that. A little bit less of power sharing is one way is informing, right? We make decisions and we tell the community about them. This is still really important. If you don't tell people what you're doing, if you don't tell people what's available, right? This is kind of your marketing space. Like if we don't tell people what we have to offer, they don't know. So this is still important, but all the power remains with the library, right? We're making all the decisions. We're not necessarily even, we might be thinking about what the community wants, but we're not actively involving them in any way. Then the one I want to talk about last is doing harm. And this appears on some of these spectra and not others, but I think it's really important that it is possible when we attempt to do inclusion work to do harm instead. This is tokenizing, stereotyping, exploiting, disenfranchising, actively upholding oppressive structures that take power from the community. So simply not challenging things that need to be challenged. And this can happen even when our intentions are really good. So that's why we're going to talk about it a little bit here, talk about how to avoid doing harm or what doing harm might look like, because I know that none of you intend to do harm. None of us intend to do harm, right? So we're going to talk about what that looks like and how to avoid it. All right, So we're just going to go through these one at a time, from the least level of power sharing to the highest level of power sharing, with harm kind of off to the side at the end. Why would we inform? Like, why wouldn't we just jump right to empowering, right? Empowerment and justice and liberation all the time. So we inform when a decision's already made, right? When it's a done deal, when something has happened and we just need to let people know about it. When we need to move really fast, right? When there are big time constraints, or when there are big resource constraints, right? We only have, you know, one staff person who's only able to work on this for a short period of time, and it has to be done by next Thursday. Right? We've all been in these situations when something has to move really fast, and engaging wouldn't make a difference oftentimes, right? When the decision is already made, or when there's something that is so central to how we do our work that it's not something that can easily change, when all the engagement and discussion in the world wouldn't really change the outcome, it's better not, in some cases, to start that engagement, right? You don't want to leave people on, or sort of use people's labor, right, to give you input if you know you're not going to really authentically use it. So there are many reasons why we might actually, you know, when we would choose to inform. So what can informing look like in action in your collections? This is on your own, right? Selecting a range of own voices and world language materials, making sure your collections are as diverse as they can be. And this is something that I'm sure you are all thinking about. This can also be creating standards for how you promote your collection. So your book lists or your readers advisory services. Are you ensuring, do you have standards and systems that ensure that the diverse voices, diverse perspectives, diverse authors, marginalized perspectives, BIPOC and LGBTQ and disabled characters, right? Are we making sure that we're bringing those things to the forefront? So they're not only in our collection, but we're making them really visible and really accessible. And not just as a one-off, not just as a, like, this person over here really cares about this and does a great job with it, but how are we creating some standards and some systems that say, if you're going to do a book list for our website, right, here are some of the criteria that you need to consider. This can also include adjusting your selection criteria and processes, right? As we know, certain voices, people from certain backgrounds, materials from certain countries or in certain languages can just be really difficult to get, right, via our Ingrams and our Baker and Taylors and our, our sort of traditional publishing houses and our distributing model, that is just tilted in many ways towards a narrow set of voices. So, for example, knowing that for a lot of libraries, right, we don't have great systems for purchasing self-published items or for purchasing international items that aren't available through our distributors. So how can we look at our selection criteria and processes with an equity lens to make sure that when we're making decisions about what goes in our collection, that we're able to draw on the widest range possible? And then also auditing our own work internally. So are we having the impact that we want to have, right? We put out a standard that said all book lists, right, should contain perspectives from a variety of backgrounds and races and genders, et cetera. Are we doing that? Are we doing it consistently? So auditing our own. So these are all really important things that we can do that are about kind of our internal processes that don't necessarily benefit or change a lot if we did some external engagement around them. So these are really important informing types of strategies. Let's move to some power sharing. When would we engage, right? When would we go to people and ask for their input, ask for their consultation? When we want to build relationships, right? Talking to people, going to them, saying, I respect you and I care about your opinion and I want to hear what you have to say, right? That's a really great relationship builder. So when we want to build those relationships, this is a wonderful avenue to do that. We can reach new audiences. We can reach out, right, to people that we might not have good connections with. And by engaging them, say if we partner with an organization, they can then reach out to their audience or their clients. So by bringing in other voices, other perspectives, other stakeholders, we can reach them, and then we can also reach the people that they serve. So this is a great way to connect with new audiences. It's also a way to build fresh perspectives, right? Asking people who are from outside of library land or whose experiences or lives are very different from ours can give us a different way of looking at something than we traditionally have, or than sort of the standard patterns that we all fall into, right, in our work. It's also important when we're trying to design services that really center and respond to to marginalized and excluded communities. And we're trying to tailor our collections or our readers advisory so that they are effective for groups that have been excluded. One of the easiest things to do is to ask them, right? So these are all reasons that we would use an engagement strategy. So what does that look like in action? That means going to our BIPOC and excluded communities, either as individuals or via organizations that are, of, by, and for those communities, asking them about what they want, hearing about what's important to them in the collection. We can also create book lists or resource lists in partnership, right, or for community partners to meet their specific goals. We can be at coalition meetings in our communities, for example, and listening to what people are working on and what their needs are. And we can bring those reference chops, those readers advisory chops, and say, hey, it sounds like you want to learn more about this. I can pull together, 10 items from our collection that might be really valuable to this discourse, right? So we can help members of the community who have been excluded to meet their specific goals by responsively, by participating in dialogue and then responsively creating book lists, resource lists, and collections for them or with them. And we can also do listening sessions. So what are the impacts of some of our policies around our collection? Or what are the impacts of if we're making decisions about what collections to grow or shrink, or how to reallocate our space or our shelving, if we're creating some new policies or revisiting old ones, looking at selection criteria, can we do some listening sessions where we say, who are the communities who are most likely to be impacted, disproportionately impacted by this decision? And let's hear from them, right? Let's bring in a diverse group of folks from that background, not just one person, not like tokenizing or asking someone to speak on behalf of their entire group, but let's have some listening sessions. Let's talk to a bunch of different people and start to get a sense of the impact of the decision that we're considering for our collections. Empowerment, right? We do this to build a more just and liberated world, right? This is the punchy stuff. This is the part that gets to the heart of our values. We would do this when we can make a sustained investment. You can't just sort of drop in and do a single thing and leave and have that be justice work, right? This is a sustained investment. And so we need to focus on these strategies, empowerment strategies, when we can make that investment. And we need to be ready internally as well. We need an asset-based perspective and cultural humility. I could go on all day about an asset or strengths-based perspective. It's a huge passion of mine, but look it up. We might do this when we already have trusting relationships. You can't just drop in on a group that has been systematically excluded and marginalized for years and years and years and say, we want to do something great for you now, come and join our effort. You have to build trust. And it has to be something that is authentically coming from the community and not an idea that the library is imposing on them. So you need that base of trusted relationships. And you want to do empowerment work where you can embrace ambiguity. Giving up power, giving up control, right? In empowerment work, you are not in charge anymore, which means you don't know what the outcome will look like. And that's not easy. And that's really different from how we're used to working. So it's really important that you're in a space where you're willing to do that. This is co-creating materials with community. I think there was a case at Seattle Public Library where they just could not get, I believe it might have been Somali language, some kind of Somali language materials for children, right, in picture books. So they worked with the community and had them write their own books, right? This is offering platforms for community created content. Recently read about a library that has created a platform for local music creators, right? This is supporting community leaders or organizations in creating their own book lists and resource lists and then promoting those through the library. And this is maybe even sharing some budget, right? Supporting community partners and making purchasing decisions directly. That doesn't just mean throwing some money at people and being do what you want, right? Because that's an abdication of our responsibility, but real support, right? Providing education, providing guidance, providing support, and with that, giving people some actual money or resources or control over what happens in the collection. And so I'll just take a quick minute and talk about harm. This is something we would do by mistake, hopefully, I'm sure. It happens when we center our own good intentions over the impact that we're actually having on others, and when we come with kind of a savior or deficit-based perspective, or when we try to jump to this empowerment level, but we're not really ready to make the investment, the sustained investment that is required. So this is asking a single staff or community member to represent their entire minoritized group. Hey, what do you think about having, should we purchase this book or not? Hey, would you write this book list for your Heritage Month? It's having committees where you nominally include a handful of people with a variety of lived experiences, but then you don't really give them real power. It is continually asking for uncompensated extra labor from your minoritized staff or community members, right? Are your BIPOC staff making all of the book lists that are diversity themed, right? Or creating policies or precedent that make it easier for materials by and for underrepresented groups to be censored. And sometimes we enact policies because we're concerned about, we don't necessarily, we're trying to protect people in our communities from work that is racist or inaccurate even, but sometimes if we're not thinking about the impact, we can accidentally create policies or procedures or precedents that actually make it easier for underrepresented groups to be censored as well. So being really careful about impact. So we're at time, but I want to leave you with some questions to consider as you're trying to make decisions about authentic community engagement all throughout the year, beyond Heritage Months or individual moments. Who's in my community? Who am I trying to include or serve or reach, and why? What kind of relationships do I have with that community? What opportunities does this project or this decision offer to create or deepen those relationships, right? Starting with who am I serving and how can I build on my relationships? How can I best give or share power in this decision? How might we do it together? How will I minimize the potential to do harm here? And really important, what does success look like for the community? And what does it look like for the library? Those are often the same, but not always. Or they might be different aspects. So how will the library hold itself accountable for achieving meaningful impact? So this is these are a lot of strategies very quickly, but I hope that the framework you take away is thinking about how you engage people all throughout the year and asking yourself some questions to guide your thinking for maximum inclusion. I'm going to include, I'm just going to flash up here so you have it, some lists, some further reading for you if you want to dig deeper into some of these concepts or see some tools. Again, you'll be able to access that in the recording. And this is my contact information. If you have questions or you want to explore any of these ideas, I won't be able to take questions today, but do please feel free to reach out to me at any time. Thank you so much for inviting me to come and speak with you today.
Thank you so much, Audrey. We appreciate your time. Next, we're going to be moving off to Laurie Likoff. Laurie Likoff is our Vice President and Editor-in-Chief here at Infobase. Laurie is an accomplished publishing executive with more than 25 years of direct experience in the school and public library sector in the areas of reference databases, streaming videos, classroom management, and product integration. Laurie heads our editorial team and will focus her presentation on the Infobase biographical and encyclopedic collections that represent a wide range of diverse subjects and themes. She'll talk a bit about the philosophy behind her collection development and then focus on 5 or 6 titles that are representative of the group. Laurie, I'm going to hand you the presentation screen in just a second here, and then take it away.
Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yes, it looks great. It's not in presentation mode yet, though.
Okay.
Slideshow mode, I mean.
Okay, let me see if I can do that. Hold on, because
it's just at the top in the red. One of the drop down says slideshow.
Oh, wait. Because my screen is kind of like it's enlarged here. I don't want to go out of that. Hold on a sec. Let's see, I can't really see how to get to that. So I don't
up
know.
At the very top of your PowerPoint, in the red stripe, it says slideshow. Yep. Move to the right. To the right.
Here.
Home, insert, design. Keep going to the right.
A slideshow.
There you go.
Okay.
And then from beginning.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Better?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, so welcome everybody. Thank you for my technical difficulties for putting up with it. As Lisa said, I'm Laurie Likoff. I'm the Vice President, Editor-in-Chief at Infobase. I've been here for many years, and I love the products, the content, the ebooks, the work that we do, and I'm a great proponent of getting the message across and getting our products right. So hopefully you'll enjoy what we have to share with you, and certainly happy to take questions and feedback at the end. So just a little background on Infobase. As a company, we were founded in 1941 as a provider of news services content. We were known at that time as Facts on File. We're still very well known in the school and public library market. We have been a provider of reference databases and print and ebooks for more than 80 years, and proud to provide that content to the educational community. Some of our well-known imprints are Facts on File, Bloom's Literature, Chelsea House, Ferguson's Career Guidance Center, and OmniGraphics. So let's talk a little bit about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what that means from a publishing perspective, since we did hear from what it means from a community perspective. So we try to be aware of new trends and changes in the market. We have to keep our ears to the ground and to hear what's being published, what people are looking for. We read the journals, library journal, school library journal, Choice. We listen to our customers. We track Google Analytics. We see what people are searching for, what they're looking for. We look at the curriculum and see what's changing in the educational space and what people are asking for. And this way we try to be responsive to the community. When we commission new works, we have a very reliable stable of authors and writers that we go to. They know our house style, they know how to work with us, and we know that they're good writers and good researchers, so we rely on them. We always are open to adding new voices and new people, but part of our reputation is based on using the best available writers that we have. We like to evaluate our sources, see opportunities to add new names, new topics, and any areas for improvement. We get a lot of customer feedback and support from our in-house and marketing teams. We like to consider new topics to cover, such as science, STEM, women, diverse populations, underrepresented voices, and then we like to add to our collections across a wide range of subjects. This is a little bit about the company itself, Infobase, who we are, and our core values, which I think align beautifully with our library customers: trust in our products, fact-based in our approach, transparency in our direction, curiosity for lifelong education, connection that we hope we make to our customers and end users, and we aspire to inspire and excite in all areas of the business. So that's Infobase, who we are and how we got to where we are. So some of the biographical and encyclopedic content that we'll cover briefly are sets and series that we've been creating over these many years and that we've been adding to over time. We have African Americans of Achievement, Asian Americans of Achievement, Hispanic American Heritage, Native American Leaders, and Women of Achievement. So the nice thing about the collections of titles is that, as Audrey was saying, that you don't have to wait for Heritage Month to engage with these works. You can engage with them anytime because they're in your library and they're there all the time. So we'll take a look at some of the biographical series that we have. They have characteristics so that you know it's consistent presentation. They are largely multi-volume sets. They're added and updated all the time. We have both contemporary and historic figures. They're the perfect length for after-school reading. I love to call them biographies for book reports. That was the original name I had for the series. And it really makes it easy for students who come to the library to do research, to read a full-length book, and have digestible content in an accessible format. These biographies typically run about 100 to 126 pages. Sometimes students are required to read a work of at least 100 pages and then write a book report. And this is obviously something to supplement their textbooks. It's additional reading and gives them a deeper dive into content for the market. So here's our Hispanic Heritage collection. This is a small number of the titles we have available, just to give you an idea of the range of subjects that we cover: Antonio Banderas, Celia Cruz, Oscar de la Renta, America Ferrera, Selma Hayek, Dolores Huerta, Frida Kahlo, Jennifer Lopez, Lin-Manuel Miranda, and Ellen Ochoa. And this, you can get an idea of the series design. We have some very nice book covers, I think, that they have, a consistent look and feel. So the students, if they're looking for a title, they're familiar with it. You have a nice big portrait size picture or image of the subject looking good and positive. And it's a very nice feature, and you'll see that in the other series as well. So if we take a look at a sample title from this collection, Ellen Ochoa, there's a product description that comes along with the ebook. Talks about the life of the first Hispanic female astronaut. She became an astronaut in July 1991. She became a mission control specialist and flight engineer for NASA. She has logged more than 900 hours and has helped open the door for Hispanic women in the field of science. In 2002, she was appointed Deputy Director of Flight Crew Operations, and she has been managing in the office and aircraft operations. So this touches on a lot of check boxes in a way. It's a woman. It's a woman of Hispanic heritage. It's a woman in science and engineering, and all wrapped up into one very easy to read volume. Here we have a sample of the book itself. So this is the table of contents. These are the chapter titles. Obviously, A Major Malfunction, Dawn of the Space Age, Born of Two Heritages, Without Limits, Studying to Become an Astronaut, First Hispanic Woman in Space, and Return to Flight and Directing the Future. And here's the cover close up. We have the nice border here with the series name, and then the picture of the subject and the author. So what we do here is we try to, here's the idea, we start with an intention grabbing first chapter. So we don't just start with, this person was born in such and such a year. So here we have obviously a major malfunction. This refers to, sadly, the disaster, the Columbia Space Shuttle disaster when it was returning, and it blew up on re-entry. So you immediately jump in and grab the student reader with something dynamic, powerful, understanding the impact that this person will have had because they were part of that. Then we go into a more chronological sequence of events. We cover the early years, the educational experience of the subject, what sets the person apart, and then looking forward or continuing their legacy. So here then you have Born of Two Heritages, Studying to Become an Astronaut, that's the educational part. What sets her apart, First Hispanic Woman in Space, and then Returning to Flight and Directing the Future. So that's looking forward. If the subject is deceased, then we talk about their continuing legacy. So that's kind of the framework. You know, these follow a template. We're not totally in lockstep, but we do like them to have a nice arc to how they're created so that the students know what they're getting when they read it. We also have additional material, timelines, an image gallery of all the nice artwork, and we have a lot of times pictures of them when they're in early years, a bibliography, and about the author. Here's another set that we have that also follows a similar format. This is from the Women of Achievement set, and in the collection we have Madeleine Albright, Laura Bush, Michelle Obama, Nancy Pelosi, Malala Yousafzai, Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Dole, Toni Morrison, Catherine Graham, Sonia Sotomayor. So again, you'll see that the covers have certain familiarity, a little bit different color treatment, a little bit different type treatment. The title is on the top rather than on the side. And we have a nice cross representation of many women from many walks of life and many areas of specialty. So if we take a look at close look at a title here, we have Kamala Harris, obviously the Vice President of the United States, clearly a woman of achievement. And again, it uses that same format. The phone call, we're going to guess, is the phone call that she received to see if she wanted to be President Biden's vice president. Then goes a little bit back to the history, Mama's Girl, A Voice for Justice. And we try to make the chapters a little bit interesting and exciting, not just, chapter 1, so-and-so years to so-and-so years, something engaging. Madam District Attorney, Senator on the Rise, Breaking Barriers, which she clearly did. She's also a woman of color. And, again, this woman of achievement really gives a nice representation to a wide number of voices in the community. We can also, there's additional support material, learn more about the Electoral College, in this case, Howard University, which she attended, what a district attorney is, and Doug Emhoff, second gentleman. And just to give you an idea of what that looks like. So you can see from the right rail here that there's, the chapters, and then into support materials and learn more about. Here's where you would have what I just mentioned. And then here's Doug Emhoff. So a little bit of information on him, just as Kamala Harris is breaking new ground as the first female vice president. Her husband, Doug Emhoff, is doing the same as the first male spouse of a vice president, and they give a little background on who he is, where he went to high school, attended college in California, and then a nice photo of them, and then it goes on, there's even a little bit more text. So you can see once you're in the ebook that you have access to additional supporting information, which adds interest and background. Then from another set that we have, Asian Americans of Achievement. Again, this is representation from a different group. We have Ong Lee, Maya Lin, Mindy Kaling, Margaret Cho, Maxine Hung Kingston, Sandra Oh, I.M. Pei, Amy Tan, Yo-Yo Ma, Vera Wang. Nice cover treatments. And a nice representation, male, female, people from different walks of life, artists, writers, scholars, performing artists. And we try over time to get a really nice broad range of coverage in these collections. Sample from this collection, Mindy Kaling. Again, being Ben, this has to do with her first big break when she was doing some workshops pretending to be Ben Affleck. Then first generation, obviously, of her family, an obsession with being funny. Big Green, her years at Dartmouth, New York Dreams when she came to the city, Long Days at the Office, refer to her work on the comedy The Office, showrunner in New Family, and support materials here would be timelines, a bibliography, further resources, and about the author. And this gives you an idea of what a timeline looks like in the same way we showed you the other feature. Here you have a nice timeline. It starts from when she was born in 1979. Her real name, Viri Minda Chakaling Graham, in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And then where she went to school, when she graduated 2001 from Dartmouth. She won the International Fringe Festival with Matt and Ben, where she co-wrote that with a friend, and that's when she starred as self-appointed Ben Affleck. She moves to Los Angeles. She gets hired to be a staff writer on The Office. She becomes executive producer. So again, when students are doing research or projects where they need background information, it's helpful to have timelines and information in one place to augment the text. So we try to provide that scaffolding for students. Another example of collections that we have that are not sets in series are encyclopedias. Encyclopedias are obviously a very different kettle of fish. They have a different approach to acquisitions and different content areas. They're longer, may have very long articles, but they're many, many more pages, obviously, than a biographical dictionary, and much broader in their coverage. So here's some nice encyclopedias that we have in the area of diversity that include Encyclopedia of African American Politics, Encyclopedia of the American Indian in the 20th Century, Encyclopedia of Muslim American History, Encyclopedia of the Harlem Renaissance, and African Americans in Science, Math, and Invention. So encyclopedia features different from the biographical dictionaries. There is an introduction. In the case of the African Americans in politics, we have documentary sources for that book. There's a lengthy list of A to Z entries, all the entries, and extensive bibliography, also images, timelines, chronologies, and about the author. There's the product description. In this case, we're looking at the Encyclopedia of African American Politics. This volume examines the roles of African Americans in the political process from the very early days of the American Revolution to the present, covers political ideas, court cases, laws, concepts, ideologies, institutions, and political processes. Written by a nationally renowned scholar, and helps put the struggles and triumphs of African Americans in the American political system, in perspective. So here we have a much larger type of format work identified by nice Library of American History, nice collage of images from African American politics, some sample entries, the abolitionist movement, African immigrants, Black Lives Matter, 40 Acres and a Mule, Juneteenth, Malcolm X, Clarence Thomas, Raphael Warnock. So we try to include, as you can see, both historic content that goes back really from the beginning of African Americans in, this country to very recent developments and things that are happening right now, and politicians and people who are active at this very moment. We also have another work called Encyclopedia of Muslim American History, which places Muslim Americans squarely in the arena of American history and culture. This is an authoritative reference, has more than 300 articles, and it was really one of the first books to focus on this critical area. There was very little covering the subject for the historical contemporary issues, including, again, court cases, themes, and activism relating to Muslim Americans, and more than 100 historians and experts contributed to this encyclopedia. And you have some information here: the copyright date, the author, the imprint, the grade range, the page count. Obviously, 1,600 pages is quite a bit more than 126 pages, so a very different type of work. Similar cover treatments, a montage with our logo here. And here are some sample entries that we have. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, African Muslim immigrants, feminism and Muslim Americans, film and Muslim Americans, missionaries, philanthropy, Muslim American, poetry, and radio. So again, a wide range of coverage. This is just a small sample. It's really a very comprehensive work, and because they're so comprehensive, we try to really be inclusive of anything that a student might need when researching in these areas. There's information about the author, who the person is as a scholar of Muslim American, African American, and Arab American history, and a professor of liberal arts and religious studies at Indiana University School of Liberal Arts. So, this gives you a sense of the types of products that we're developing in this area, and ways that we want to be responsive to the community and bring authoritative reference material to everyone who is researching in this core area. So that pretty much wraps up my presentation. Many thanks to the Overdrive team. We do have a rich collection of titles across many disciplines, and certainly we take recommendations from our customers, our audience. If people have suggestions as to titles that they think we should be adding in these areas or coverage that we should have, then we're more than happy to hear from you in all these aspects. So thank you very much. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, Laurie. And just quickly, how might people make those suggestions to us? Is there a website or an email address we can offer?
Yes, I can give you my email address, and you can also just editorial@infobase.com, and we also have our customer support group. You can easily send something into the company, and it comes to editorial, and we respond to every email that we get. We have a nice group of editors. I have a number of history editors, and they're really responsive on top of things. They represent American history, world history, multicultural studies, and we do really welcome the feedback. So it's a serious and legitimate request that you can let us know what you're thinking and where you'd like to get additional content, because you're right there, and you know what your students and your patrons want to be studying.
Fantastic. Let me sure I'm sharing my screen there. Whoops, it's the wrong thing. Stop sharing. I lost my screen share. I had my slide show up. There it is. Let me do that again. There it is. And I lost it again. So I'm going to not share my screen and just end it there and say thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today and participating. Overdrive, thank you so much for allowing us to participate in your In the Know webinar series. Without further ado, we're going to log off, and we hope you all have a really great day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.